Hi, welcome to Nina in the Kitchen, where today I am making a pasta frolla, and what that is an Italian short crust, pie crust, tart crust, torta. It's really a great recipe, and especially if you've never made pie crust before and you're kind of afraid of it, or a tart crust before. This one is so user-friendly. With just a few little steps, you can make it beautifully for the first time, every time after that. And so we begin. This is 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, which is 330 grams of flour. You may know it as plain flour. I have 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. That is 106 grams. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That's 2 grams. 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, 2 grams. Well, I accidentally put the egg in, so now I've taken some of that out, and what goes in is the fat. And this is basic for making any pie crust. You want to cut fat into your dry ingredients. The dry ingredients were mixed up rather well, and now you just pulse. That was 10 tablespoons or 140 grams of unsalted butter. And here's what you want this to look like. Some of this is rather fine, and some of it still has bigger pieces of butter in it, and that's exactly what you want. What happens is that those fine granules of fat that were mixed into your flour prevent the gluten from really forming well, kind of stops it. Those bigger pieces of butter, what they do is as they melt in the oven, they sort of steam and they push up the layers. They create little pockets of air, if you will, and that's what makes your pastry flaky. Next goes in 1 large egg. And that was 1 beaten egg. The reason I beat it, even though I'm using the food processor, is because the food processor it works very well, mixes things very quickly, but as soon as you add liquid, it's going to start forming gluten, and we don't really want that. This is 3 tablespoons of whole milk. That's 1/4 cup or 55 milliliters. Let's see what we have. I can hold this, it clumps together, but if I tear it apart, you can see there's fine little pieces in there, and then there are larger pieces, larger chunks, and that is going to make a beautiful flaky pastry. So I'm happy with that. If you're a beginner and you don't know about the moisture level that you want in your pie crust, what you want to do is err on the side of it being a little too wet, because if it's too dry, you really can't work with it later. If it's too wet, you want to rest it. After you mix it, rest it and let that gluten kind of relax. Bring it out, and you can always add flour. You can't really add water as you're rolling it out. So err on the side of wetness. The other trick to pastry is you want your fat, no matter if you're using lard, shortening butter, you want your fat to be cold when you're making the dough, and you want your fat to chill again afterwards. That's where we are now. What I'm going to do is just clean this up, and we'll come back and I'll show you how to wrap it to go in the fridge. Okay, well, we're back, and I just wanted to show you how you package this up. Now, from here you have some choices. You can put this into a little plastic wrap, put it in the fridge or freezer. You can freeze this up to 6 months, and you can actually chill it down, and then put it in your pan and freeze it in your pan. So it makes putting a pie or tart go together in a snap. So this is plastic wrap, and what I do is I put a sheet down on my counter, and then I move the box over so that about 1/3 of it is going to be covered by this second sheet. What I'm going to do now is just take this and put it down, make sure that blade pops out. You always want to know where this blade is. It can be very dangerous. And now you decide on what you're going to make with this. For me, I have an easy choice because all of my pans are round. Whether I'm making a tart or a pie, I only use round pans. If you like a rectangle, you might want to shape this into a square, but I'm just going to, now if you see this, I'm not kneading anything. I'm just gathering all of those crumbs together, making it into a round disc. And again, if you look closely, you can see all of these speckles of fat in here. All of that will create layers. And also this dough, because it has the baking powder in it, it comes out kind of like a shortbread cookie. And so it does puff up a little bit, and that also keeps it tender and it makes it brown evenly. This is really a keeper recipe. I'm going to wrap this up, and this goes back into the fridge for at least an hour. 3 to 24 hours is better because you want this chilly. So I made a dough yesterday. I'm going to bring that one out and we'll start rolling it. Before I roll this out, I thought I would show you the pans that work well with this particular pie crust. This is called, it's a shortbread crust, and it's got a lot of sugar in it, so it doesn't roll out easily, but you can use that to work in your favor. This is a type of pie crust that you call a pata pan. You pat the dough in the pan. You can roll it somewhat, and you'll see what I mean as we get going, but these are the pans that would do well with it. This is a deep dish pie pan, and as you can see, it doesn't have a lip on it, so you can make a pie in here, but you can't do a pie that has a decorative edge. There's no lip. This is a small tart pan. It's got a removable bottom. These tin pans do not need to be buttered. Your crust will pop right out of these. And this is where you don't have to roll the dough at all. You can actually just do the whole thing with your fingertips right in this pan. And then these two, you can use a pie pan. You want to butter the pan, and I would even flour it just to make sure that your tart is going to come out. But you can absolutely put this pasta frolla in here and partially roll it, partially use your fingers. Make sure you get into the edges. And then when you finish, depending on the filling, you might even be able to pop it out and then serve your pie. This is the one that I'm going to use. This is a 10-inch, which is 25 centimeters. I write on the bottom of my pans so that I know exactly what they are. But, and that will stay on there for years. I'm going to put this in here. I like the ratio of crust for this particular recipe in a 10-inch pan. But you know what? If you have a smaller pan, you're just going to get more crust, and that's not a bad thing. This is a 7-incher. And again, because this is a dark tart pan, I would butter this or put a cooking spray on it. But you want to do something so that your crust is going to release from this. Okay, let's get rolling. Now, as I've said, this is a very tender dough. And the way that I get this started is I take a pinch of flour, and you just lightly dust. A pinch of flour and just lightly dust, just like that. And with these short crusts, it's actually a good idea to roll in between sheets of either waxed paper or even this plastic wrap, and I'll do that a little later in the process. Now, I have this tapered pin, which I really like, but if you're a beginner, I think it's easier to use this American style pin. A lot of them have ball bearings, and just find one that is a comfortable weight for you. And what you want to do when you roll is you don't want to press down into the dough. You want to lean into the dough. So you can make some little dents going one way and then the other. And that just kind of helps you get a grip on it. So you roll from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock, turn it. If it ever sticks, another little dusting of flour. Always in pinches. 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock, and turn it. And you just continue like that. Now, if this starts to get soft on you, this particular dough, rather than put it back in the fridge, what you can do is just put it into 2 pieces of waxed paper, or I could use this plastic wrap, and you roll it. I'll just do that for you so you can see. You can just roll this dough in between the plastic wrap. Now, if we can go all the way to the size of the pan, that's great. But I have a feeling, because this dough heats up kind of quickly, so you're going to end up doing some rolling and some patting in the pan. When you roll your dough out, never roll over the edge. What happens when you do that is you pinch the edges of the dough. So you just roll up to the edge and then turn, and that's how you kind of take care of the edges. Just roll over it very lightly on the side of the pin. One reason that I like to use this tapered pin on something like this is because you can use the edge to kind of go around the corner, and it helps you shape your dough. If you've never tried one, you might want to pick one up. And that looks pretty good. I have some edge that's going to come up and fill in. And because I'm on plastic, all that I'm going to do here is flip this right over. It doesn't matter if I don't get it perfectly, because this dough is so forgiving, you can move it around. And I don't know if you can see how this really wants to tear on me right now. It tore right there. But if it does tear, it doesn't matter. Now, whenever you have a tart pan or anything with a side that's a 90-degree angle, what you're going to do is take your pastry, lift it up, and come in at it from behind to make sure that you fill in that edge. I'll show you this way. Lift it up and come in to fill that edge in and go all the way around. Architecturally speaking, I really like having a thicker side than bottom, because it gives you a nice profile on your pie or tart. So I'm just kind of folding this down a little bit, making sure there's extra all the way around, extra on the sides. And then you just want to even them up. I'm just taking my finger and pushing into the sides so that these sidewalls are even. And then you just take your pin and you roll over the edge. And there you have it. Have a little bit left over, but that's okay. Now, this next thing is called docking, and it's important, especially if you're going to blind bake this, which I'm not going to do. But you take your fork tines and you just sort of go all around. It's especially important for this pie crust, because this one has a leavening agent in it. Remember, we put the baking powder in there. So you just want to sort of poke it and make sure that as this steams in the oven, that it's not going to have a blowout. You don't want bubbles in this. Now, at this point, you can take this, put this in the fridge for up to 2 days. And so it's a good do-ahead recipe, but also you can seal it up in plastic, maybe bags, and then put this in your freezer, and you can keep that for 6 months. So how easy is that? You just have a frozen pie shell ready to go. So you can also freeze it like this, one way or the other. This is a great, easy recipe for you. And I want to show you the finished product. This is what the pie crust looks like. Now, this is a fig tart. And as you can see in profile, we built up the walls a little bit more than the bottom crust. It's much like a cookie, but it still has those flakes that you would get in a pastry. It's really delicious. So even though it's flaky, it's also kind of crumbly. It's a really great texture, but you can also flavor it. So think about this. Now, this is a fig walnut tart. and there's a back flavor of orange. So what I did for that tart is I actually put a little orange extract into the pie crust. I hope this has helped you. Thank you so much for watching Nina in the Kitchen, and I hope to see you next time. Bye guys.